After 7 races without tasting victory, Charles Leclerc was back on the top step of the podium in Austria after outracing Max Verstappen and passing him on track 3 times. It could even have been a 1-2 for Ferrari, but Carlos Sainz's engine had other ideas when it blew up with just 13 laps left, putting him out of the race. Following his return to winning ways, a very happy Charles Leclerc said, "Every win is special, but this one feels amazing. The last 15 laps were on the limit with the issue we had, but we brought it home. Today, we really had a really strong pace and some great battles. I worked hard last night to find where I could still improve, and it made the difference today. I'm very happy." Elsewhere, both Mercedes drivers crashed in qualifying on Friday, so to finish the weekend with Lewis Hamilton back on the podium in 3rd and George Russell right behind him in P4 is a strong result for the Silver Arrows, especially since Russell was hit with a time penalty for his lap 1 clash with Sergio Perez and sustained damage that required a front wing change. These were the thoughts of Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff following the race. "We always seem to be in 2 minds at the end of the races right now. We must accept P3 and P4 today, and when you think we had 2 cars in pieces on Friday afternoon, that's a strong result. But we are missing the 2 or 3 tenths to be able to race at the front. We have glimpses of light at the end of the tunnel with the car. Then it disappears again, and we need to get on top of that. Today, over a race stint, we looked more competitive than yesterday, but we had 2 drivers needing to put in strong recovery drives after incidents in the sprint and in the opening laps. It was good to see Charles on the top step. He's had a lot of bad luck, and it looks like the fight is on at the front. Now we need to work on the car to close the gap to the teams ahead, then see how we can get into the mix." After crashing the Mercedes W13 in Austria qualifying, Lewis Hamilton said his rebuilt car was close but did not quite feel the same. Hamilton started sprint qualifying from P9, having suffered a heavy Q3 crash, improving a place to P8 on the Austrian Grand Prix grid. It was a particularly disappointing incident for Hamilton, as the W13 was, by his own admission, looking like a car which was fighting for a spot in the top 3. After a heavy rebuild job, including a swap to the spare chassis, Hamilton was back in action for the sprint and full-length Austrian Grand Prix. And though he felt both incarnations of the W13 were similar, the 2.0 version was slightly different to Friday's. Asked how the W13 felt on Sunday, having said after qualifying that it had top 3 potential, Hamilton told reporters, "Honestly, I do feel like every now and then our qualifying pace looks like we could have been in the top 3. And obviously, with the crash, that wasn't possible. And then a completely new car, everything, strips, new chassis, obviously same engine but changed the gearbox, I think all the corners, everything. And then that you firstly don't want to damage the car again. The car definitely didn't feel exactly the same as what I had on Friday, but very, very close. And it just seemed to get a bit better as I got more dialed in with it." Hamilton did deliver though on the potential he felt, going from P8 on the grid to a P3 finish. Retirements from Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz helping his cause. George Russell crossed the line P4 in the other Mercedes. Nonetheless, it is a 3rd podium in succession for Hamilton, a result which he certainly would have taken heading into the Austria weekend. Asked if he would have seen P3 as a good result coming into the Austrian Grand Prix, Hamilton replied, "Definitely. Definitely. I mean, especially after a difficult Friday with the crash, which was not expected. And I'm really still so sorry to the team, of course, but just so proud of everyone for working so hard to rebuild the car. And also just proud of everyone back at the factory for continuing to work hard. I know they're going to have to know what they do with those bits that I destroyed, but hopefully we have some new, better bits to come after that. So this is a great recovery for us as a team. To get a 3rd and 4th is some really good points. And so we have just got to keep our heads down and keep chipping away, and we're slowly eating into the guys ahead, but they're still pretty quick." Lewis Hamilton criticised Pierre Gasly's driving after contact between their cars sent the AlphaTauri hopping into the air at the start of the Austrian Grand Prix sprint. Off the line at the Red Bull Ring, Gasly moved alongside Hamilton, who had started 1 place ahead of him, only for a clash of wheels to lift him briefly airborne and into the runoff area at the opening corner. The Frenchman made a recovery of sorts to finish 15th and will start the Grand Prix itself 1 place higher due to an engine penalty incurring by Valtteri Bottas. Hamilton, who found himself stuck behind Mick Schumacher for a sizable portion of the 23-lap sprint, ultimately got past the the Haas and starts 8th. The 7-time former world champion describes the early incident as unnecessary, while Gasly was unable to shed much light on it, with the stewards deciding no blame should be apportioned to either driver. Asked by Formula1.com for his version of events, Hamilton said, "1, I didn't have a good start, and secondly, I don't understand these drivers. I don't know if they know they are moving across, but it was just unnecessary. He had so much space on his right, so that's unfortunate for sure. I got some sort of damage there, I don't know exactly what, but it was a big hit to my front and I was just grateful I could continue. Then I got another one further up by the Williams and the Red Bull did the same thing, but I just managed to survive. So grateful." On his hopes for the Grand Prix, Hamilton, who had crashed in qualifying on Friday, hence his midfield grid slot for the sprint, said, "I hope it's not like today. We'll see. Fingers crossed." It was not the first time Gasly has been involved in a first-lap skirmish in a sprint, for it also happened at last year's Italian Grand Prix, where he crashed out. Asked by Formula 1 to explain what had occurred with Hamilton, he said, "I don't even know. You probably know better than me what's happened. I was alongside Lewis and suddenly we touched and I was facing the other way of the racetrack. Just extremely disappointed. We started in the top 10 and then before the first corner, it was already over." On how the car had felt after the contact, he added, "The whole floor on the left side was broken, so it was pretty horrendous." Lewis Hamilton may have finished on the podium, but Toto Wolff believes there is still work to do as Mercedes have only halved the gap to Ferrari and Red Bull. Mercedes continued on their upward trajectory with another P3, P4 finish at the Red Bull Ring, their third in the last 4 races, and there was still a gap between themselves and the leaders Ferrari and Red Bull. The team have gone a long way since the early days of the season when they spent more time battling for a midfield spot than they did for a podium, but the result in Austria again comes with the caveat that they were only there because of Red Bull and Ferrari DNF'd. Speaking to Sky Sports F1 after the race, team boss Wolff acknowledged this and said they were currently in the middle of nowhere. "It's just we're missing a few things here and there," he said. "I think we've halved the gap over the last few months. We understand better, but that's still third for us. We are somewhere right in the middle of nowhere, but I would say if I tried to pick the positives in the race pace today, if we would have, which we didn't, start at the top 6, probably we could have held on to Max Verstappen and not be too far away. It would have been a successful weekend for the 50-year-old who saw both of his cars damaged on the Saturday. The team were left running around for parts and Wolff described the rear wing fitted to George Russell's car as a barn door. He continued, "We're lacking speed on the straight. I think we're much too draggy. Maybe much is too much, but we are draggy. Even more draggy on George's car. The only rear wing left was a barn door that we put on there, but we are too draggy and we seem to be lacking power here. For the first time again, the last few races were really strong. Maybe it's the altitude, but it's something that all the guys will analyse and for sure compensate in the next races." It's actually good because we're starting to see that we're chipping away performance from the leaders, which is important, and we find ourselves in a situation where we have always discussed, which is one day after 8 consecutive titles, that series is going to break, and we want to make it a blip and not some kind of longer cycle. The next race in the Formula 1 calendar takes us to France on July the 22nd.